Welcome back, everybody. Oh yeah, teacher Brandon's the greatest. You guys in chat are right. Uh, and actually, I want to just take a moment to say this is one of the strengths of Kaplan is that we give you a whole stinking bunch of teachers, right? Because you will resonate with different people in different ways, and hearing things said in different ways matters. It's one of the things I like best about the MCAT channel. But speaking of hearing from different voices, we have a whole bunch of pre-meds here, and I have the two experts who literally wrote the book about how to be successful as pre-meds. Please join me in welcoming Elisabeth Fassas and Candicee Childs. Thank you so much for talking to us. Please, would each of you introduce yourselves? Candicee, would you go first and tell us about the title and what does your book talk about?
Yeah, sure. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. I'm super excited to be here to be talking with you all today. So my name is Candicee Childs. I'm a second year medical student at the Medical College of Georgia right now. I'm from Savannah, Georgia. And yes, I did somehow in this crazy busy schedule publish a book, which is really amazing. And it's been such a great journey with that. So the title of my book is pretty long. It's called Lemons, Lemonade, and the Lemonade Stand, My Bittersweet Journey to Medical School with an Interactive Journal for Pre-Meds. I know, super long. It's crazy long, but it really incorporates everything in my journey. And essentially, I know you're probably wondering, what on earth do lemons have to do with getting accepted into medical school and pursuing a purpose in medicine? That's a great question. But I feel like when people say, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, and that essentially pretty much just describes my process of trying to get into medical school. There's some sour moments, there's some sweet moments, but I just want to take that time to encourage other people to pursue medicine and to understand that there will be ups and downs, but you will see victory in the end.
And Elisabeth?
Hi, thanks so much for having me as well. My name is Elisabeth Fassas. I am a second year medical student at the University of Maryland in Baltimore, and I'm also originally from Baltimore, so staying close to home. My book is called Making Pre-Med Count, Everything I Wish I Knew Before Applying Successfully to Medical School. And my book is really talking about like super practical advice and inspiration about like all the little things that drive you crazy throughout the 4 years of undergrad and of pre-med when you're thinking, oh my gosh, how are they going to look at this or how are they going to think about that? I really walk you through how to put yourselves into the shoes of the admissions committee and start answering some of those questions for yourself.
Yeah. So I told you, I got the experts. So as you have questions for them, put them into the chat, and I will try to shepherd as many of those to Candicee and Elisabeth as we have time for. Right? How do you actually do this thing? And I actually want to talk first about you. Not only were successful as pre-meds, which we all know is crazy. You then wrote a book. While you're doing. Tell me about that. How did you find the time? How did you make the time? What additional structures did you have to put in place to be able to write and publish a book as you were going through these difficult processes?
Yeah, sure. So do you want to go first?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I actually, people ask me this all the time, and my joke is that I was like such a busy pre-med that so I took 2 gap years. I took one to do a master's degree and one while I was working as a consultant. And like the stress and the pressure of being a pre-med and feeling like I had to be on all the time, I got to this kind of other side of it. And I was like, what do I do with all this free time? So that's truly, like, I was doing it kind of on weekends and everything just because I felt like I needed something to fill my time with. So that's me. Maybe I'm just a crazy person. I don't know. What about you, Candicee?
I think that's wonderful. I'm so used to being busy, right? This is my normal level. I got to write a book in my spare time. Now, what do? I think that's beautiful. Candicee, what about you? How did you balance all of the things that need balancing?
Yeah, so my story is a little bit different in the sense that I actually started writing the book while I was still applying. And I had it in my mindset that one day, whenever I get through this crazy process, I'm going to finish this book and I'm going to put my story out there to help people. So in a way, it's like, I didn't know if I was going to get it. I didn't know when, but I said, one day I will get in, and I'm going to document this process as I go along, so that one day I can actually publish this and kind of like give something back to other people who might be in the same shoes as I was. So while I was applying, after I had got rejected to medical school the first time, I applied to grad school. And while I was in grad school, I just was writing this book. And I said, you know, I really have no end in sight right now. I might have to apply 3, 4 times. Thank goodness I only had to do 2, but I just had no idea when I was going to finish the book. I just started on it. So as I was going through these different thoughts and different processes, I really was just documenting it the whole time. And then once I finally got into medical school, I said, okay, it's time to finish the book. So I would say I was about 40% done with the book by the time I actually got into medical school, and the other 60% I actually finished the summer after my first year, which was last summer. So that's kind of how that came into play.
And so you're still busy. So start me out at the beginning. Tell me what, for each of you, and Candicee, if you would go first, what was your biggest misconception or biggest surprise throughout the process of applying to medical school, or where were you wrong about something or surprised about something?
Yeah, so personally, that's a really great question. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions I had was about gap year and taking a gap year. I feel like that shouldn't be something that's taboo, like, oh my gosh, I gotta take a gap year. Like, I don't think any pre-med should ever think like that, because sometimes you need that extra time to really find yourself, to get involved with other opportunities. And I feel like the biggest misconception with the process is feeling like you have to rush yourself to get to medical school. Medical school will always be there. I promise you, people are always going to need doctors. And so take that time to really build up your application to the T, make sure that's the best it can be before you apply, and don't rush the process. So I think my biggest misconception was thinking that if I didn't apply by a certain time, I was a failure, or if I didn't get in right away and started med school right after I graduated, I was a failure. And I realized over time, like, wow, I had so much more like growing to do, so much learning to do. And it just really was amazing process. And I feel like I was so much more of an even more enriched person after understanding that, hey, this was a part of my process and I loved it. And it really made me a better person overall, because I went to get a master's degree and I learned so much about healthcare administration and the hospitals and healthcare, and I feel like it really helped me. So that's what I can say was like my biggest misconception, is feeling like I had to rush myself to get there.
Well, and the Petros at the end of his last session had that sort of idealized timeline. And we had a session of folks talking about their gap year that we took, and in the next session we're going to be talking to folks that didn't have the idealized session. In fact, sort of what I'm learning is that almost nobody follows that idealized pathline, right? At some point, everybody does something a little bit different, and that's sort of a beautiful thing about this journey. Elisabeth, what about for you? What was really surprising to you, or what was unexpected, or what was the biggest misconception that you had?
Yeah, so I guess kind of on a similar note to Candicee, I was a very stressed out pre-med, which I think after, I tutor a lot of students with Kaplan, and I think after kind of meeting with so many students, I definitely was not the anomaly. Like, it's really, really a stressful time. And I think for me, as soon as I submitted my application, I was like, oh, why was I so stressed, right? This entire thing, 4 years of college for me, because I applied after my senior year, is all boiled down into like 15 pages of your application. I get to tell them what I want them to know. I got to pick my recommenders. I got to focus on the things that, I was stronger with, and so on and so forth. So I feel like all of the time I spent, oh my gosh, should I double major? Should I single major? Will they care that I, didn't do really well in my physics class? Will they care that like I took 2 languages in a semester and that doesn't look so hard? Like all of these like little things so don't matter. And so I think that was really, and that's kind of what inspired me to write the book as well, because I was like, wow, like if people only knew what it's like on the other side of it, right? That it's really not as daunting as it seems.
That's really important. I do think that probably you're in the minority that
Yeah.
after you get all that stuff together on that one document, you're like, yeah, this is no big deal. What was I so worried about? A lot of us still continue to have nerves once those applications are in. But both of you, am I right there that you both pursued a higher degree after your undergraduate degree? What were your master's degrees in, and how did you decide to do that?
Yeah, so I'll go first. So my master's was in health administration. So I had this mindset of, I didn't have anyone in my family who was ever in healthcare. I didn't really know much about medicine. So I said, before I start providing care, I need to know about the system. I need to know about healthcare in general. And I said, this would be a great way for me to learn about that. And so I was able to get that master's and I learned so much about healthcare. And I feel like it really is going to help in the future, if I decide to start a practice, or maybe I want to work as an administrator while being a physician, you just never know. But I just wanted to kind of get some basis of healthcare before I actually went into healthcare, if that makes sense.
And
Yeah.
Elizabeth, for you?
Sorry. Yeah, I was similar. I did a master's in international health policy and economics. And for me, and I talk about it in the book, I had this kind of come into Jesus moment my junior year of college where I really found a passion for social policy and felt like I wasn't getting any of the background information that would affect my future patients in any of my, my bio classes or my chem classes. And I thought, wow, there's a whole world out there. Like you can talk about medications, but if people don't have, you can talk about giving insulin to a diabetes patient, but if they don't have money to buy the food that they need to be eating, or they don't have money for their prescriptions, how much does that matter? So I really wanted to kind of learn more about what I consider to be like the real foundations of providing medical care. And that's why I kind of pursued that.
And it gave you time to write a book, right? Because grad school, no big deal. It was fine. Well, we have a ton of great questions coming in, and y'all keep asking those questions. One of the first ones was about interviewing. Interviews are scary.
Yeah.
What are your, Elizabeth? You start us this time. What is your number one tip about preparing for med school interviews?
Yeah, so I always say this to all of my students. This is going to sound so silly, but do your power poses before you go in. It's a really stressful process, right? Everyone, like all the people on the other side of the table, they know that you're anxious. They know that you're stressed out about, having to talk to these doctors and to these medical students about applying. But really, if you have gotten to that point, they already like you. They already think you're going to make a great medical student. They just want to get to know who you are. So just, I say, do your Superman poses, calm yourself down and go in there confident, excited to show who you are and what you're going to bring to the table.
Can I see your Superman pose?
But standing up,
Okay. I'm going to start incorporating that. That's great. Candicee, what about you? What are your interview tips?
Yeah, so I feel as though when it comes to interviewing, I kind of have the same thing as Elizabeth. Like for my thing, I would say be yourself. Please be yourself. Like she said, you're going to be nervous. That's okay. But the biggest thing is just be yourself. They have your application. They read about you. They know about your academia. They know about these things, but they don't necessarily know about you. You have all those things written on paper, but there's so much more to you than that application. So it's just like, wow, when you think about it, there's so much about you that they absolutely have no idea about, all the great things about you, the things you love to do. So really just be yourself throughout this interview. Really just make sure that, yes, you are advocating for yourself. You want to separate yourself from everyone else and stand out. And that's what everybody wants to do. But the best way to do that is to be yourself. There's no one like you. You're unique. You have something great that they already saw in you to interview you for. So just show them that, just tell them that, and just be confident in yourself throughout the whole interview. There's sometimes I think back about some of the interviews I had where it was like, it was okay. And some that I was like, oh, I felt pretty good. And I think the ones I felt pretty good is because I just was myself and I was unapologetically myself. So that's my advice.
All of us. Now, I hear tell about this. Of course, as a teacher, I don't have this problem ever. Have trouble relaxing into being ourselves. So other than doing my Superman pose, are there ways that I can practice? Because because also sometimes it's just nervous to do public speaking, right? Just to, these are people you don't know, but there are people that you really want to impress, right? So how can we practice that or relax into that?
Yeah, so honestly, something I did was I went on Google and I just found some common questions and I just kind of already started practicing that in the mirror with other people. I actually sometimes would go and set interviews with the career services at the school and had them interview me as though they were the admissions committee. So I could kind of learn and figure out like, what do I do when I get nervous so that I know that this is what I can anticipate for myself with my nerves, and then I could find ways to go about that. But then sometimes there'll be times where, you know, right before the interview, I didn't necessarily do a Superman pose, but I would be thinking about Eye on the Tiger or some type of crazy, like rad song that would just get me hyped, like, oh yeah, I got this, like, this is great. So, you know, it's just, those are some of the things that I would say, like, just have something to hype you up. You know, practice ahead of time if you feel like you are going to have jitters, if you are going to stutter, if you feel like, you know, so that you just kind of know yourself and know like, oh, when I get nervous, I start to twitch a little bit. So maybe I should hold my hand, you know, like while I'm there, or maybe I should move my hands around or something. Like just get to know yourself, practice, but also just have something to hype you up right before you go in.
Yeah, I agree with those 100%. The only other thing I would add is that like every single interview that I went on, it was so much more of a conversation than it was an interview. So like find things to incorporate into your answers that you like to talk about and that gets you excited and that highlights, like Candicee was saying, who you are and what your passions are. And it'll just go so much smoother if you're, you know, talking to someone instead of, you know, like, oh my gosh, I'm on an interview right now.
And guest 3377 raised a really important point, right? That we're writing a personal statement and we're trying to convey who we are in that. And they're nervous that they're just going to keep repeating the things from the personal statement. So is there a way to come up with talking points or brainstorming, or how did you all handle that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is going to be really similar to your personal statement, right? Because the personal statement is supposed to be, you know, a picture of kind of what has gotten you to that interview. Why are you here? Why are you passionate about medicine? What are you going to bring to the table? But like I said, it's so much more of a conversation where you get to put in actually who you are and no one's like counting your characters, more than, you know, like more than specifically answering their questions. So if you know that you get nervous and, you know, speaking to other people is not really an easy process for you, then yeah, I would come up with a couple of talking points, just kind of some aces up your sleeve in case you get stuck. But I would say more often than not, like no one is trying to trick you. No one is trying to make this hard for you. They just really want to get to know who you are and what you bring to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are some amazing points for sure. Because that was something that I did as well. Like, the thing is, like you said, they've read your personal statement, so they know all about that. But if you think about it, it's only what, 5,300 characters of your life that you shared with somebody. And think about how much time you've been living. I am very certain you have other stories that just really just show like how amazing of a person you are. I'm very certain that there are other things that you have done. So yeah, like have some talking points, have some other, you know, anecdotes and stories on the side, like maybe you can, you know, talk about, but just keep in mind that there's a lot more to you than that personal statement that they don't know. They are a stranger. So literally there's so much about you that is at your disposal. And when they ask certain questions, maybe even about your hobbies, maybe you didn't mention that at all in your personal statement or your application. So talk about the painting that you've done, maybe some of the gigs that you've done with, you know, playing guitar or whatever it is, and say why you enjoyed that. Or, you know, maybe there's some opportunities that you've done that nobody knows about. And then, hey, that just continues that conversation. And you don't know where that's going to lead you in the conversation to open up about even something else. So yeah, have some thoughts, have some stories, but just remember there's so much about you that they don't know yet. So there will be a lot at your disposal that you can select and choose from to talk about.
Candicee, I feel like you're assuming a lot about me. I'm a deeply superficial person. You already know everything there is to know about me. Let's shift gears a little bit. Stress. stress management is a skill. What are the tools that you have found to be most helpful for you as you balance getting done the things that need to get done while also taking care of the human that needs to do those things, right? So Candicee, what are sort of your top plays for keeping yourself on track?
Yeah, so I've honestly just always been this kind of person where I like to stay organized. I have a planner. I love passion planning. If I haven't gotten one, get one. But I love passion planner. I love to write out my schedule. I'm kind of old school that way. I also have where I place events in my phone and I set reminders about things. So I like to stay organized. So depending on how you are as a person, I'll say get organized in the way that fits you, that makes things easier for you and easier at your disposal. So that's one of the things that I do. I also have to set priorities. Okay, so setting priorities would mean that if there's a deadline or there's something pertinent that has to get done that you have to do, go ahead and do that first. Get that out the way. If there's something that you might not necessarily have to do, it's okay to delay that, but make sure you just put that in the to-do list for something to do later on. So I love to make to-do lists. I love to set priorities. I will say that I set myself as a priority. Do not think that you have to set everything else as a priority in your life. You are a person and you can't provide care to people one day if you don't take care of yourself. That's just how it is. And you can't be a great student without taking care of yourself. You can't think, you can't just think about anything when you are stressed out. So make sure you take care of yourself as a priority, whether you take a nap, which I like to do every now and then. I will take a nap. I will cook my favorite foods. I love to go exercise. I exercise late at night. That's what I love to do. So make sure you're also keeping yourself as a priority, but set those priorities, get organized and make sure that if you're not the type of person who like to schedule free time, give yourself a break. Every day, find something, whether it's go watch TV or something else, just make sure you have time for yourself to take a break and have free
And
time.
DC, hearing how organized you are you though the type of person that schedules your free time?
No,
No,
no.
not even a little. I'm
I do not.
surprised.
I'm a flexible person because the thing is, I set a to-do list for the day. I don't set a time frame. I just set a to-do list. So as long as it gets done by the day, even if I go take a nap, as long as that to-do list is done by the end of the day, I'm good. I'm set.
I love it. I love it. And but how did you learn to right size that to-do list? Because I find that if I'm not careful, my to-do list is always longer than the day.
Yeah. So pretty much just like I take it one day at a time. So literally for that day, I'm thinking what needs to get done for that day, or is there something coming up that absolutely has to get done first? So, for instance, if I have a test tomorrow or something like that, I'll say, well, I have to study today. If I have some paperwork that I need to do for a class, I'll say, well, that's not due until after the test. So I'll put that down the list, maybe put that on tomorrow's to-do list after the test. But I just make sure that whatever I'm putting first is priority, is something that's pertinent, that absolutely has to get done today. Like I have to make sure this is done today. And then that's how I kind of form those to-do lists. So I only would maybe put 5 or less things on my to-do list. So that's something else. So that's why it makes you think to yourself, okay, what is really a priority then? Because you can't do everything today. You only have 24 hours and you're sleeping. You should sleep, please sleep. So make sure that whatever those things are, those 5 things, that they're your top priority for that day.
All right, so that's one approach. Elisabeth, is your approach similar, different?
Yeah, so I would say in some ways similar. I'm also really a huge fan of like what has to get done versus what I would like to get done. I'm really, really clear with myself about that. There's always, as pre-meds and then when you get to medical school, there's always something else vying for your attention, whether it would be more time for studying or doing research or doing volunteer work or doing clinical or, taking care of yourself or whatever it is. There's always, always, always something else that you could be doing. So eventually you learn to set really strict boundaries around your time. And, as you kind of, like if there's a freshman out there listening right now and you're not there yet, that's fine. It took me literally like 10 years to get to that point where I'm like, all right, now I can say no to things. But I think that's really, really important to just say, you know what, if I don't get to everything today, that's okay. The other thing that I think I'm becoming a lot better at as I kind of progress in my academic career is to say, you know what, there are some days where I'm just not going to get everything done, right? I, wake up not in the mood, or I don't feel well, or, I just like cannot look at my screen anymore, whatever the thing may be. And I think getting to the point where you say, you know what, that's okay. It's all going to be here for me tomorrow. I can just do it then. Without, obviously you don't want to get out of hand, right? But to a point where you say, even if I spend all of today, going super slowly or watching Netflix or just kind of making it a self-care day, that's okay, right? All my stuff will be here for me tomorrow. It's not the end of the world. I'm just kind of coming to terms and coming to peace with that, I think has been really, really important for me in managing the stress and also getting things done.
You're a human that needs human care. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And that's okay. And medical schools think that's okay too.
Well, no, they don't. No. So tell me more about this, because we have this image in our heads, right? That if I don't check all the boxes and if I don't have everything just so, right? We know how competitive it is, and it is competitive.
Yeah.
But it's not true, right? That they expect all of us to be an uber human. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. So I would say, like, I have probably worked with over 200 students throughout my time in Kaplan, and I don't think I have ever met a single student who was like, oh, I'm great. Every box is checked. Everything is perfect. I have a 4.0 GPA. I have a 550 MCAT. Everything's perfect, right? I've never met that person. And all of those students have still gotten into medical school. And then once you get to medical school and you meet all your classmates, you're like, oh, look, everyone's just as human and imperfect as I am. I always encourage people to think about, what is my worst case scenario? I just reapply. It's fine. It's not the end of the world. Like Candicee was saying, you'll get an opportunity to do something really, really exciting with a gap year. That might end up being, the best thing that ever happened to you. And then you'll end up where you need to end up next year. And it's fine.
Absolutely. Honestly, I think that's the biggest thing. You have to be patient with yourself. Be flexible. And I think that's something that, a lot of people don't think about. If you're the type A person, I have to get A, B, C, D done. No, it's not going to always happen that way. Life happens. I'm telling you, med school, even with COVID right now, life happens. And there are some things that you absolutely just can't control. So it's okay to be patient. It's okay to be flexible. That's just the best way to go about it, saying, hey, I would like to get these things done, but if you don't, then that's okay. Like, you have plenty of other opportunities to get it done. And that's something that I had to learn over time. But once I did, hey, it's been smooth sailing. Taking it one day at a time.
One day at a time. And also there's tons of research backing up, Elisabeth, what you said in terms of what's the worst case scenario, right? That talking through realistically with yourself, what's the worst case if this doesn't get done today? What's the worst case? And then also, when you're making plans, building in flex time, right? Because things will come up, because you're going to sometimes, not feel well, or need to spend some time with your humans, right? Your friends, your loved ones, your family, right? Like that those are human things. And so building that flex time in upfront and being realistic with yourself. How do you, each of you, right? You're both very busy people. Is med school all you got cooking right now? Candicee, is this, what else you got cooking? What's going on?
What else do I have cooking? Well, the thing is, I love to do a lot of community service. Right now, I'm working with teens in Georgia. It's called Resilient Teens. And we just Zoom and talk with teens once a week, and we'll talk through them with different topics, and it's great. I love to paint. As you can see, one of my paintings in the background. So I paint. I love doing that. I love collecting vinyls. There's just so much that I'm doing. I'm actually thinking about another book or two, which is which is interesting. I'm like, we'll see, we shall see. So I'm gonna pump the brakes on that right now. But I have that in the works that I'm thinking about. So there are just a lot of things. And then I also have my own website. So I mentor students. And I talk with students. Sometimes I'll speak at certain events. I just spoke at a Black History event last week. So, it's just a lot of things are going on in the background. So I'm not just a medical student, there's a ton of things going on in my life.
Elisabeth, are you similarly?
Yeah, I similarly stretched. Yeah, so in addition to school, I'm working with Kaplan, working with students, kind of helping them reach their MCAT dreams and kind of get over that hump. I'm doing research with school right now, which is super exciting. We're kind of working with a group of students on a health literacy project. So really trying to encourage our school to get health literacy topics kind of more integrated into our curriculum. And I'm also really involved with like the American Medical Association and the State Medical Association, kind of getting myself into policy. So those are kind of, things that I was really interested in before coming to medical school and that I was able to kind of incorporate as I went through.
So how, people that keep yourself so busy, how do you prioritize what to say no to?
Yeah, so I think for me, it really depends on the season. So like right now I'm taking my boards in 3-4 months in June, however far away that is. But so, school is my priority absolutely right now. And then obviously working is really, really important too. So those are kind of my top two hitters. And then everything else just kind of gets filled in as it can be. I would say the more you interact with, it's gonna sound crazy, but the more you interact with people that are not students, right? The more you kind of get away from college where everyone is just like right here trying to kind of build this application, the more you realize that like all adults have lives and have things going on and have a million oars in the fire. So I think generally people are very understanding that you have stuff going on and that you kind of will set expectations for, a week down the line, 2 weeks down the line, because they're all also doing the same thing. So I think, set your kind of priorities and everything else will kind of find a way to fit itself in.
Yeah, that's essentially pretty much what I do as well. The thing is, I had to come to a realization that I am not Wonder Woman. I love Wonder Woman, by the way, which is why I have this pen. So I was like, I can't do everything. I am not a metahuman. I am not a superhuman. I am just a human. So that means that there's some things that I just can't do. And I just had to come to realization that that's okay. So how I go about selecting, what is, I guess, more important, or, sometimes it's not even just about what's more important, it's about what I need. So, if I need to, take a break, I will take a break, and I will say no to certain events or certain opportunities. I know that in my class, they're always having things that they're, posting and saying, hey, can somebody do this? Can somebody see that? Well, I'm one person of 200. There are 199 other students who would love to possibly participate in this. So I don't necessarily have to right now, which is okay. So essentially, I really just kind of think about, what do I need to get done? What do I need for myself? Do I need a break? And I just have to say no. Just kind of getting an idea of not necessarily beneficial, because it really depends on what it is. Because of course, community service is beneficial, but you might not be able to do it all the time because you have to think about what's coming up. Maybe you have a test that you need to study for. You just can't do service right now, but hey, you could do it next week. So I try to rearrange my schedule so I can fit things in. But I just do the best I can to, essentially just kind of, again, set priorities. And if it's not quite a priority, then sometimes I have to say no.
And should say no, right? That I think that's being responsible and true to yourself, right? All right, so we're out of time. I knew this was going to happen. We wouldn't have enough time. We still have lots of inquiring minds. Sorry that we didn't get all your questions. I have one last important question for each of you. Candicee,
Yeah.
what's your number one piece of advice, short of going out and buying your book. We'll plug your books here at the end again. But other than buying your book and listening to all the great things in there, what's the number one thing that these pre-meds need to know?
I would say my number one thing is understand your path, your journey is yours. And you have to be patient with yourself, but you also have to be able to motivate yourself. There are going to be some times where there are going to be some things that get in the way. And there will be some times where, hey, it works out and you're able to get into medical school. But throughout this journey, you have to see it as a journey. It's not always about just the destination. It's also about the journey. So things might change, you might deviate off the path, but eventually you're going to get back on it and you're going to get into medical school. So you got to stay positive. You got to stay motivated no matter what happens. And you just have to remember that you can do this. You absolutely positively can do this. No matter how long it takes, you can get there, just like me.
Yeah, I would say a similar thing. I always tell everyone, like really big picture this, this stressful thing, this bad exam grade, this whatever it might be. If you want to get into medical school, if you want to be a doctor, I guarantee it will happen, right? It will happen some way, somehow. There is no way that if you decide I want to do it, no way it doesn't happen. So you just have to kind of, as soon as you decide that that's fact, everything else just becomes a lot less heavy, and I would take every single moment, every single setback, every single, kind of what if with a grain of salt, recognize that that's true and kind of take it from there.
Yeah. I like to say a similar thing about the MCAT, right? It's standardized test. It's always the same. It is the culmination of years of work, right? But
and if you need to, you can just do it again.
Right. Or if you need to do a couple years of work, you do the years of work, right? That's what it is. And that's okay, right? Well, thank you both so much. The books, again, Candicee Childs, Lemons, Lemonade, and the Lemonade Stand, My Bittersweet Journey to Medical School, and Elisabeth Fassas, Making Pre-Med Count, Everything I Wish I'd Known Before Applying Successfully to Med School. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Yeah, folks, stick around. Speaking of the journey going sideways, we're going to be talking about folks that took some unusual paths on their journey to med school. We'll be right back.